If you're still interested in leveling up your D&D notes and you've just lined up your next D&D campaign, we're ready to move on to the next step. Welcome back to the second episode of Bullet Journaling for Dungeons & Dragons. I'm Burrows Red, and today I'll be taking you through the steps for setting up your campaign journal before the first session. We'll be discussing ways to do a session date spread, a character mood tracker, and how to set up your character sheet in the following steps. 1. Campaign cover page. 2. Sessions list. 3. Sessions at a glance. 4. Character mood tracker. 5. Level 1 title page. And 6. Character sheet. As with the last episode, the video's timestamps will be listed in the description below to make it easier to find what you need, especially if you're returning to this video. Firstly, let's recap what we covered in the first episode of the series. If you haven't seen it yet, I would recommend checking it out first to make sure you don't miss any of the steps. I'll do a quick flip through to refresh your memory. At this point, you should have your pre-campaign setup completed. These steps consisted of the title page, index, key or legend, character cover page, backstory spread, goals, and the style book. Your own journal may not be in this exact order, but these were the basics. Once all of that is complete, we move on to before the campaign with that very first step, campaign cover page. With your new group planned out, you'll set aside a new page for the campaign's cover page. You'll have to help me with the lighting changes for this section. I filmed this part where I filmed the first episode and my room setup has changed since then. Anyway, the campaign cover page would be the perfect place to find something that reminds you of your fellow PCs, or something that alludes to the general vibe of the campaign. If you're playing in an urban setting, you may choose a cityscape, or if you're in a campaign from one of the canon modules, such as Rime of the Frost Maiden, you may choose to have some snow-themed mountains or icy glaciers. For mine, I chose some inspiration from Pinterest and decided to go with a layout of weapons. Above weapons for their respective characters, I placed the character names of the other players. I picked things that their characters would use by asking them what their characters had equipped. I believe that this setup is an easy way to display your campaign because it doesn't require too much pre-knowledge about the campaign to design. When creating it, you'll note that I left a space at the top right. Most campaigns end up having a campaign name or a group name. When I originally drew this, we hadn't decided what that was, but now we have. The Chocolatiers. Honestly, if you're still interested in joining in on the shenanigans of the Chocolatiers, highly recommend checking them out on WisdomSaves. We stream the campaign every fortnight at 2:30 ACST. Links to our Twitch and YouTube can be found in the description below. So, whether you've left a space for the name right now, or you have one already, you're good to move on to the next step. The sessions list. One thing that 2020 has taught me is that time both moves incredibly quickly, but it can also still feel like the longest march ever. By including a place to list where you've had each session can help you keep track of how many times you've played, so you know if you're truly up to date with your notes. If you're playing in a stream campaign, this can also be useful when navigating video archives or working out what episode is next. It could even be more important for home games, as you don't have recordings or posts to keep the dates for you. It's up to you if you prefer to call them episodes or sessions. They can be used interchangeably, it is your call. The actual setup of the page is simple. I've placed a title up the top and left enough space to do a few columns, anticipating there being a number of episodes or sessions to keep track of. I'll be going in later to fill in some of the colours on the plants, but I used some pink washi tape to add a pop of colour to the page. I feel like I haven't been very adventurous with colour for this journal, and I'm still deciding if I like it. So, once your sessions list is done, we move on to sessions at a glance. Let's travel back to past recording me to see how I filled out this page. Similar to how many bullet journalers use year at a glance to have a quick snapshot of what events or special dates they have for each month, I have opted to include a condensed version of my episode notes to help me quickly find when important things happen. For example, if we meet the big bad evil guy, I would add this to the episode it corresponds to and have a quick reference if I need to remember when it happened. If your campaign tracks dates, this could be a good way of working out how much time has passed in-game. It can also be a good place to track when you've leveled up, when there were certain combat events, etc. I've made them the size of a Polaroid picture. You can make them as small or as large as you need them to be. Behind the scenes, I've been working on my Dungeon Masters campaign journal to this similar bullet journal style, so I know that episodes can fit into a smaller box like this. They're designed for even more condensed notes than your larger, more detailed notes to come. But we'll cover that later. As you can see, I've only left enough space for 8 episodes. Once this page has been filled out, I'll make a new episodes at a glance spread to discuss the next 8. Or if I find out there wasn't quite enough room with 8 episodes on 2 pages, I can condense it or work on it and amend it as I need to. Now that you have your sessions at a glance spread done, we move on to an optional but possibly important character building element, the mood tracker. Personally, I don't like using mood trackers in my daily bullet journal. However, they can be great for our characters when we're playing D&D. It can give us a general idea of how the character was feeling during each episode, and it really gives those players who love roleplay the opportunity to reflect on how they portrayed their characters throughout the campaign. I chose a branch as my mood tracker. That way, when I fill out 25 leaves, I can add another branch further into the journal to continue it. Also, the branch style suited Natalie and the aesthetic that I've developed for her. Mood trackers can be done in infinite different styles. For example, a water genasi could use glasses of water, a fire-flavoured spellcaster could do small tongues of flame across the page, or you could even go for a grid where each square corresponds to one episode. The main feature to maintain for any idea is to use colour to depict the character's emotion during a session. For Natalie, I used only 3 measurements: happy, sad, and stressed. I decided those were the most important things for me to track. If your character is overly angry, you may want to track that. Or if they feel homesick or generally torn, you could include that also. Just try not to make it too complicated, otherwise you might confuse yourself when you go to fill it out. With that, and with the mood tracker done, let's move on to the level 1 title page. As it sounds, this is the page that signifies your character's level. It's that simple. Your campaign might begin at level 1 or level 3 or any other level. The page is just a placeholder to separate your character's journey into what level they were at each point. As with every other title page that we've done so far, just find something that suits your character. I went for this simple circular design with level 1 written in the middle. Despite its simplicity, I feel like it stands out amongst the text and design-heavy pages I have around it. Just go with what you feel is good. Again, I highly recommend organising a Pinterest board to seek some inspiration. This is the perfect time to mention that it's okay to make mistakes or to be disappointed with how a spread looks. It can be disappointing to put a lot of energy into a new spread only to find that you don't like the end result or it just didn't come out like you wanted it to. It's easier said than done, but if you can remember what worked for you and what didn't, you can use that experience and apply it to new spreads. Once we've gotten further into the series, I'd love to go through with you some of the things that I like and I didn't like about what we've done so far. It happens to everyone and you are absolutely not alone. Anyway, let's move on. We move on to one of the trickiest pages, the character sheet. Okay, this may be one of the more complicated pages to explain, as my approach to character sheets and character stats is going to be very different depending on what character I'm playing, but but also the individual. To try and sum it up as neatly as I can, you want your character sheet to be functional, to find what you need quickly and easily. If you use any colour, try to use colour to highlight what sections you need the most. Experiment with pencil first to lay out what you need, and try to keep both your stats and your combat features on one spread. If you don't function well with large blocks of text, try to break down your character's features into things that make sense to you. I began with my character's stats on the left, similar to the setup of a standard character sheet. I chose the ability modifiers to be the larger text, and the total ability score to be the subtext. I realize the order of which is bigger number is a cause of contention, but I need to know my modifier more than I need to know my total ability score. Case closed. I then included some standard stats I need to know, such as my initiative, armor class, proficiency bonus, and speed. You notice I didn't try to mimic the design choices of a standard character sheet, keeping it all uniform instead. The armor class is usually depicted by a shield, but I chose not to include that. I also shortened each of the words to condense the information. Again, looking to keep this page as functional as possible for me. The health section has Natalie's maximum health to the left, and an empty space to the right for listing lost hit points in combat. When I take damage, I like to use a tally system to track how many hit points I've lost until it equals my maximum health and I'm dropped unconscious. You may choose to count down, or may simply require more space than this though. For hit dice, I only really have one at level 1 anyway. So I listed a small box that I can just tick if it's used. Easy peasy. I love the idea of tick or fill boxes, so I also use them to count death saves and proficiency in skills. It's similar to how a character sheet presents it, but with the compacted look I've aimed for with this spread, I think they complement each other nicely. Plus, they're incredibly easy to use. Functional, yes. I mentioned avoiding blocks of text if you need it, but I found I had enough space to list my character's features. Sometimes the exact wording of a feature can come in handy in tricky situations, but these things are also just a Google away if need be. Not a necessity to include on your spread, but it can be nice to have. I love how the skills section came out. It looks so neat and so nice. Feel free to also do it this way if you feel like. I hope it helps inspire you for this section. Then we move on over to the combat section. I tried to bring everything I'd need to combat onto one page, and it ended up working quite well. This is where it gets a little bit more personalized for my character. Natalie is a barbarian, so she doesn't need to cast spells. All she does is cast Axe. One of her biggest abilities is her rage also. It's the stats for her weapon and the wording for her rage takes up most of the page. I also included a cute little icon for the damage types: slashing, bludgeoning, piercing. This should look very different if you're a spellcaster. You might instead choose to have a separate combat spread to list all of your spells and abilities. But Natalie had a simpler time than that. I did add a small cheat sheet section for what a standard action should look like in combat for Natalie though. It lists the orders that I should do things. So, first step, rage as a bonus action, second step, attack with my great axe. Just below that, I listed the damage plus the rage modifier, which I have a habit of forgetting in combat. This small addition of a standard action helps me remember what order to use my turn in combat. If I have a decent break from playing her, I can return back to this and quickly refresh what I need to do in combat. Rage, hit, add damage. Done. While it's not as important at level 1, where it's pretty simple and there's not a lot to manage, it becomes fairly important at higher levels. As a barbarian, I need to remember to add reckless attacks to this list to ensure I'm optimizing combat as much as possible. This may not be as important to everyone, but we all know how painfully long combat can be sometimes. This is just my way of trying to shorten the amount of time I spend trying to decide what to do, to make combat more exciting for all of us, but also to take down monsters as quickly as possible for the thrill and excitement and, I don't know, challenge or something. Lastly, I filled out what I currently have in my inventory and a section for adding my coins. With that, the character sheet is complete. You should end up with a spread that gives you everything you need to play your character. It also marks the end of what you need before the session. Have a look through all that you've done and be proud of what you've prepared for your character. Whether you're doing this journal for a new character or an old one, spend the time to go through and spruce up some of your old pages as you see fit and personalize it even more. Thank you for watching the second episode of Bullet Journaling for Dungeons & Dragons. I'm sorry about the delay with releasing the second episode. The world has been on fire, and I know we've all been struggling. I hope this helped to inspire you to go out and make your own campaign journals. If you have a campaign coming up, or you want to talk about your character's journal, leave a comment below. Or, if you want to talk more about this series, I also have a Discord you can join where we share our progress pictures and help each other out when we need it. All of that will be down in the description. If you've enjoyed today's episode, it would mean the world to me if you could do that standard thing and like and subscribe. I know it's something all YouTubers say, but it really does help us get discovered and share our content with a broader audience. It's one of the best ways to support free content. Otherwise, I'll see you again on how to take notes for your first session. It's been lovely to see you, and I'll be back soon.